Europeans have become winners of new Venezuelan situation as American oil and gas distribution companies are wary to take advantage of Donald Trump's and Delcy Rodriguez's advantageous terms of commerce. Companies from the Netherlands and Singapore will initially be involved in distributing Venezuela oil across the world at market prices, while ambassadors of such countries as Spain, Portugal, France, United Kingdom, Italy, Germany, and the Netherlands, as well as Switzerland, have met with President Rodriguez and her team at Miraflores Palace so that relations between Europe and Venezuela strengthen. It is likely that as Europe realizes that Greenland is in jeopardy, they might be more sympathetic to Venezuela than they used to be. Everyone in general are excited that both Nicolás Maduro and María Machado are out of the Venezuelan picture, as both were polarizing figures with lots of enemies and entrenched irrational positions that led nowhere. We have wasted so many years of Nicolás Maduro and María Machado fighting each other that the best possible outcome is that both are out of the country and they will never return. Venezuela does not want Nicolás Maduro to come back. He has to serve his prison term. And María Machado is incapacitated for political office in Venezuela for at least the year 2036. She visited the Pope and she will visit Donald Trump, and it will be a nuisance because every once in a while we will have to endure boring and stressful María Machado's meetings with international community members, as she is always pretending to destabilize Venezuela. But that will not endure. Venezuelans will form a new opposition that will gracefully come to terms with new government of Delcy Rodriguez. María Machado and Nicolás Maduro are both a horrible past that we should not repeat ever. Alliances with Russia, China, and Iran are gone. Those three countries provided expectations that Venezuela would become a beacon of the multipolar world and they would defend us, and nothing like that happened. And they actually did not invest enough in Venezuelan petroleum industry, as our production is still low and investment has not been extensive. It is with great pleasure that we hear from Caroline Levitt, press secretary of President Donald Trump, that relations with President Delcy Rodriguez are working wonderfully and they are preparing a $500 billion package of petroleum investment in Venezuela during the next few years. Unfortunately, details and specifics are not being handled as quickly as we would like to, but certainly the good relationship between United States and Venezuela is unexpected and welcome. It is totally fine that Venezuela becomes an American protectorate, especially when we see that Donald Trump has no intention of imposing María Machado, as Marco Rubio led us to believe, along with the crazy Cubans not too long ago. Venezuela will remain as an American protectorate during the next few years, as the alternative would be civil war led by María Machado, as her intransigent points of views will clash with those of Nicolás Maduro's supporters. We definitely need both Machado and Maduro out of the Venezuelan political picture forever. And Venezuela needs new leadership. The National Assembly presented points of views of congressmen such as Luis Florido, who has been complaining rightfully that political prisoners sent to prison by the violent activities promoted by María Machado, such political prisoners are not being released in a timely fashion. Jorge Rodriguez, president of National Assembly, claims that 400 people have been liberated, 160 during December and 240 during January. However, the count doesn't add up. A full listing of political prisoners released is not available. Statistics in Venezuela remain an issue that should be solved as soon as possible. Figures of inflation, unemployment, economic growth, number of political prisoners released, oil wells in development, oil wells idle, terms of commerce with different countries. Everything in Venezuela is extremely opaque, subject to transparency, which never comes. We hear from economists that macroeconomic conditions in Venezuela should improve in the next few weeks as bigger foreign currency flows will enter the market, alleviating exchange rate pressures. However, differential between official exchange rate and market exchange rate continues being significant, although there are early signs that the differential is narrowing a bit. Caracas stock market is outperforming stock markets of other parts of the world. In general, economic news sound awesome. However, people on the street remain as unemployed and suffering inflation as usual. Donald Trump is expected to continue his power struggles in Iran, Greenland, and Cuba before midterm elections. Donald Trump is using foreign policy in toppling governments of uncomfortable countries as soon as possible, as the Democrats are expected to win midterm elections in November. And if Donald Trump doesn't topple Iran and Cuba's government now, and if Donald Trump doesn't acquire Greenland now, it will be very difficult for him to do so after the midterms when the Democrats take over House and Senate. So Donald Trump needs to hurry up in his foreign policy objectives as the clock is ticking, and after the midterms, Donald Trump will be forced to revert to domestic policy. While the opposition of Iran and real estate developers of Greenland and the people of Cuba who have endured a dictatorship for almost a century depend on Donald Trump's assertiveness to complete jobs that are still pending. International community is in process of reshuffling as we have received confirmation that United Nations and other multilateral organizations are irrelevant All decisions are made by United States, and other countries have no option but to obey. Russia, China, and Iran were supposed to be formidable adversaries, and they are just falling in line with the United States as everyone else. United States is expected to strike Iran within the next few weeks, and perhaps a new government in Iran will complete the global American-led petroleum strategy designed by Donald Trump. President Delcy Rodriguez also met with a special envoy from the United Arab Emirates. The purpose of the meeting was on petroleum strategies. United Arab Emirates is a close ally of OPEC Plus, and perhaps they are converging petroleum sales strategies to the United States, as it has already been done with Qatar. Similar talks should be expected with Saudi Arabia to complete a comprehensive OPEC Plus strategy. Russian companies such as Rosneft claim they are determined to continue in the Venezuelan market. However, their produce would probably be sold by the United States according to the new agreement. Russia has been particularly disappointing. Russia has a tendency of abandoning its allies, just as it abandoned Syria recently. New balance of power in Venezuela will face pressures from United States protectorate status, along with an opposition that is deeply divided between those who need to retain María Machado out of the political picture against María Machado's supporters, who are the greatest threat to Venezuelan stability, as they are not the favored option of either the American protectorate master or the vassal Venezuelan state. New opposition leadership needs to be formed. However, social media of Mrs. Machado always makes sure to have her permanently on the news cycle, which is a complete nuisance. And it looks like Venezuelans will spend all the years to come fighting against foreign interference of Mrs. Machado, who is not allowed to come back into Venezuela. Mrs. Machado is responsible for most of the political prisoners, as she led them to violently protest in the streets, and her discourse of hatred was permanently ingrained in many people who are now in prison, and now we have to convince the government authorities to release them. But government supporters feel that political prisoners have committed crimes, while everything they did was on behalf of Mrs. Machado, who actually spoke to the Pope and claims to be a faithful person while oppressing her enemies. Venezuela will never regain full peace until Mrs. Machado gets out of politics, just as Leopoldo López and Juan Guaidó already conceded politics is not their future. It is hard for the Venezuelan government to make too many concessions because once you start making some concessions, people who say are democratic start with the ridiculous idea of getting Mrs. Machado back, rather than forming new opposition leadership. We hope that we do not waste lots of years fighting against Mrs. Machado again. We have been fighting against Mrs. Machado during many years already, and that needed a coalition of moderate opposition and government supporters until we successfully were able to block her ascent to power through the controversial elections of Mr. Edmundo González Urrutia. Edmundo González Urrutia was not allowed to reach Venezuelan presidency because he would have been a puppet of Mrs. Machado, and that would have been out of the question. No military and no Venezuelan civil society would have accepted a Machado government which would be equal to Maduro's government. There is too much rejection to both of them. Venezuela needs a reconciliation figure which cannot be offered by either Machado or Maduro. Cuba seems to be receiving petroleum now from Mexico. However, it is unclear if Mexico will subsidize oil to Cuba in the very generous terms that Venezuela used to. We have no reports of Presidents Claudia Sheinbaum and Delcy Rodriguez speaking to each other, as Mexico and Venezuela are the two countries most at risk of a military bombardment or invasion. Re-entering Venezuela into the international community will be a long process, as the recent infighting between Maduro and Machado has made tortuous headlines worldwide during many years, and countries are signaled one way or the other for taking sides to either of them. We need a depolarizing figure, and the only tangible arrangement we have are these OPEC deals between Trump administration and Rodriguez administration, and we hope that this phase one of stabilization takes time and is completed successfully. However, the threat remains that some people want to bring Mrs. Machado back, and that would mean destabilization. We are at great risk of being imposed democracy, which would mean apartheid of Mrs. Machado supporters against Mrs. Machado's opponents. Venezuela may not risk a return of Mrs. Machado, and Venezuela cannot risk release of Mr. Maduro's from prison either. Both repugnant political figures must be definitely thrown away to the trash can of history. Unfortunately, some Venezuelans are rooting for Maduro's return, and other Venezuelans are rooting for Machado's return. And since these idiotic supporters of extremist leadership continue destabilizing the country, the governments of Trump and Rodriguez will have no more option but to continue their opaque protectorate master-slave dealings indefinitely, because Venezuela is not prepared for democracy, as democracy means choosing between Maduro and Machado, as they are polarizing figures approved by political campaigns that neglect the rise of alternative leadership. Democracy is not an option to Venezuela, and the preferred scenario is just to continue stabilization through petroleum trade, as Donald Trump and Delcy Rodriguez are doing. And that means supporting Donald Trump's policy all over the world, into any country he so desires, as a grip of Donald Trump into Venezuela right now is our only chance for survival and economic growth. The alternative would be a reversion into democracy and the obnoxious campaigns of both Maduro and Machado, which are full of slogans and hatred against fellow Venezuelans.